Hello and welcome to Colossal Fantasy Football. My name is Dan. I want to thank you for joining me today. We're going to go over our waiver wire for week 6. And if you just finished the Monday night game like I did, I want to congratulate Drew Brees for becoming the #1 quarterback for passing yards of all time. He passed Brett Favre and Peyton Manning today, so congratulations to that. That's quite a feat and much deserving to an amazing quarterback. So for week 6, we have bye week for 2 teams, the Lions and the Saints, and we have a major development for Jay Ajayi. He tore his ACL, so he's out for the season. So that's going to have some major implications to the fantasy world and to the Eagles, obviously. And Leonard Fournette has already been ruled out for week 6. So, again, more implications for their team and for the waiver wire. So I'm going to start with quarterback. And, of course, with these bye weeks coming up, you're always going to be looking for replacements. And I have some suggestions. And some of these suggestions I have, they're going to be obvious. Like, come on, Dan, these guys are already taken. But, some of the leagues are smaller that they might not be taken. Or, you never want to assume that these players are already taken. You always want to double check, because so many times I've not double checked and just assumed guys were taken, or I was in a hurry or whatever. And I see, the waiver wire the next day. I'm like, wow, that guy was still available. Somebody picked him up. So you always want to double check, and you want to do your due diligence on that waiver wire, and because you can be surprised who's out there. So for quarterback, I have Jameis Winston. He can score at, a QB1 level, a top 10 level. So with him back as the starter, I think if you need a replacement for a bye week, or just if your quarterbacks are not producing, he would be, I think, a good guy to pick up and possibly start. Mitch Trubisky, I think he's more of a bye week replacement at this point. I know what you're going to say, that he blew up the last game. What did he have? I think so he had a bye last week, week 5, but then I think week 4 he threw for 6 touchdown passes. So I'm pretty sure he's not going to do that every week. That was an anomaly, but I think it could be a good bye week replacement. So, look at him to pick him up, and Andy Dalton. And I know what you're going to say. Last week he only threw for 1 touchdown pass, and he wasn't that great because I started him. But I think he could be a decent fill-in. He has a home game against the Steelers, who give up a lot of points to their to opponents' passing game. So I think he could still be a strong play this week if you need a fill-in. And so for my running back, I have a lot of names. So running back waiver wire suggestions, I have a lot of names. And again, some of these, could be like a stash that you might want to, think about, or, keep at the end of the bench if you have a spot. Like my first one is Nick Chubb. And I think now Carlos Hyde, he's only managing 3.7 yards per carry. So I think that he could definitely be a stash, and I think that they need to get him the ball because they're not getting enough, production from their Cleveland's getting enough production from the run game. So I think he could someone he could stash, and I think they would be dumb if they weren't trying to get him more touches every week. So, and then Nyheim Hines, he seems to be the leader in the Colts backfield. He's getting the most touches. He's getting a lot of targets, a lot of balls thrown his way. I would say definitely pick him up if he's out there. I don't think he's going to be out there, but he might still be in some leagues. Now my next one's Alfred Morris. Now Matt Breida, he had a high ankle sprain this last week, and I think he's going to be okay from what I've heard, but he would be one to pick up because I believe that Breida is going to be questionable for this week, so he would be one to pick up. To get a lot of the opportunities this week for San Francisco. So I mean, he might be one you can plug and play, for any bye week replacements or even if you're hurting at running back. And, running back's been brutal this year, like is almost every year with injury. So now my next one's Deonta Foreman, the running back for Houston. Now he's not active yet. He actually won't be back from the PUP list, I believe, till week 7. Now, see what my strategy is I try to do this stuff a week early. You don't want to do it the week of because then everybody's doing it. So instead of waiting till week 7 until he gets back, I say pick him up this week and stash him if you can. I mean, obviously, if you don't have the spot, if you don't have the ability to, you can't. But I say pick him up a week early. Then next week when everybody's scrambling, they go, oh, someone already picked him up. So it's a good strategy to try to take these guys a week early before they go off. And, Lamar Miller has not been very good. He only has a 3.9 yards per carry, and plus he was hurt last week, and Alfred Blue was playing most of the game. So I think that he would be a good one to pick up at this point. Frank Gore. For some reason, the Dolphins are running 35-year-old old man Frank Gore more than Kenyon Drake, and Kenyon Drake had a really good game actually. But Frank Gore is getting more carries for whatever reason. But he'd be another one that for depth or bye week fill-in, whatever. But that's a weird one for the Dolphins. I don't know why they're running him more, but he's been decent. And as bad as running backs have been with all these injuries, if he's out there, you might want to take a look at picking him up. Mike Davis, he is now the clear backup to Chris Carson. He had 12 carries, and he had a TD plus 2 receptions for 7 yards. I know it's not a great stat line, but, again, if you need someone, there's so many running backs that are not producing or they're hurt, the Dalvin Cook owner or that Leonard Fournette owner or, LaShawn McCoy had a good week this week, but, there's all kinds of reason why you need some depth, and he'd be another one. And if anything happens to Carson, who was hurt, 2 weeks ago, he'd be in there for a bunch of carries. And then with Jay Ajayi going down, I'm suggesting, Corey Clement, who is probably going to be owned, but pick him up if he's not. Wendell Smallwood, who had a good game. And then Josh Adams. And that's more for like a dynasty, really like a deeper kind of, pickup. But with Jay Ajayi gone, that's going to create all kinds of opportunities. And of course, Darren Sproles is there too, but I'm not really sure of his stats. I think he's been hurt and he's, been in and out, and he doesn't play, as much. And these are the guys I would rather own than Darren Sproles, but Darren Sproles would be another one too. But those are some suggestions there. And then with the Buccaneers, they have to get Ronald Jones in. He was active, the week before the bye, and they haven't gotten much production in the running game. They've got to get this guy more touches. He's a dynamic player who can take it to the house on almost anywhere on the field. So, Peyton Barber, he only has 2.4 yards per carry. So they're relying on their passing game, and they need to try to balance out their offense, and this will do it if they can get this guy more touches and get some more production. So the Lions, Kerryon Johnson has been, the primary guy. It's still kind of a committee with LeGarrette Blount, but Kerryon Johnson had a high ankle sprain, and they think that he's going to be fine, but, again, here's kind of a sneaky play, pick up LeGarrette Blount now, and then later in the week they find out that, Kerryon Johnson's not going to go, boom, you got your guy. You got the starter there, and you know what LeGarrette Blount can do, that hammerhead shark kind of boom right through the line, getting those touchdowns. So, we'll see what happens, but I'm going to look at, picking him up anyway on some of my leagues that, I could use, some upside. And, he doesn't really have the upside, but the touchdown upside, obviously. So, now with the Bengals, Mixon came back and had a good game, but now Bernard's out, who played pretty well with Mixon out. So who's that third guy? That third guy is Mark Walton. And again, this is just a suggestion. I'm not suggesting go get this guy for every team, but it's situational. If you've got some depth, he's going to get some more carries until Bernard gets back. So that's someone I would look at. This is more, again, like Dynasty, deeper leagues, and I think Dynasty is already going to be taken, but, what if Mixon has problems? So, I'd be looking at these teams too, like Cincinnati, like San Francisco. With these injuries, they're probably going to be signing another guy. So you might want to look at who they're signing. I always try to keep up to date with, the new signings with these injuries, because you never know. You could get these guys that are in with their old coaches who really like them, and they give them more of a chance than you think. So just something to think about. So for my wide receiver ads this week, or suggestions, as I will say, Christian Kirk. Now, when I was suggesting him, I looked up some stats, and I found some interesting things. Is that he's second on the team for targets. He's first in receptions and yards. The rookie. I was surprised by that. And, the Cardinals are not lighting the world on fire with their offense, but they are, he is getting, the majority of the targets with, Fitzgerald banged up, and he is their future. So I guess it seems like maybe Josh Rosen has a connection with the guy. So, I'd look at picking him up if you can. And Mohamed Sanu. With Calvin Ridley going off the last few weeks, we thought, he's going to be taking over that number 2. Nope. Mohamed Sanu had a great game. And I suggested that Calvin Ridley or Julio Jones would have the long touchdown, but it was Mohamed Sanu, and he had that touchdown. And nope, Julio Jones is still without a touchdown for some reason. Driving me crazy. But so he might have his best season with the Falcons. And in the last 3 games, he's had at least he's had at least 7 targets. So now Robbie Anderson, he had 3 catches for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's another one that could be that upside guy on your bench that, if he gets going with Darnold, he could be doing this. I'm not going to say game after game. He's got 2 touchdowns and 123 yards, but because he only had 3 catches. The volume's not there, obviously. But again, it's a guy that, if I'm going to have a boring, average, 6 to 8 point guy on my bench, or a guy that can get me, 2 touchdowns and 23 yards, I'd rather have that. So, it's up to you. It's how you, construct your team, but I'd rather have guys on my bench that, can get me those points. And then, of course, so with the Packers, Cobb was out, and so was Geronimo Allison. I think they both. Well, Allison had the concussion. I can't remember what Cobb's injury was, but Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the rookie, he came in and he played well. If Cobb or Allison still miss more time, he might be one, again, another upside kind of stash guy, but he might be one to look at on your waiver wire. And then Kenny Golladay, should go without saying at this point. He should be owned. But if in your league, you got a small league or whatever, I'd look at adding this guy. He's definitely in the rotation. He outscored, I believe, Marvin Jones. So, they have a 3 wide receiver rotation for the Lions. So he's definitely one to pick up. And Kiki Coty. Now, if you watch that Texans game, they seemed to be devising ways of getting the ball. I think they had some sort of they handed it off to him like it was a reverse or something. This guy looks really good. He looks like a vet out there. I'm trying to get him in like almost every team that I can, and I actually tried that last week. So if he's still out there, get him. He looks dynamic. He looks good. So and then of course Tyler Lockett, he's actually the number 1 receiver for the Seahawks until Baldwin gets back up to speed. But let's see, you can get him off the waiver wire. I think he's going to be owned, though. But, all of 2 weeks, he scored at least 17 fantasy points. So, and he leads the team in routes run, receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. So, and then also the Colts receivers. No, I'm putting down here Chester Rogers and Ryan Grant. Now, again, T.Y. Hilton was out, and I think he's going to be okay for the next week. But again, these are two other guys just to know. Some of these players I'm naming, I'm not necessarily saying go pick them up this week. I'm saying consider it. And these are some guys that are, I guess I could say, their stock's up. So I try to give you a wide range of who to pick up or who you can look at or who to keep them, maybe keep on that watch list. And here are two guys, because last week with T.Y. Hilton out, they had Rogers had 11 targets and Grant had 9 targets. So again, just something to think about. Let's see, and to round out my wide receiver list, I have the 2 receivers from the Saints, with Ted Ginn out for today's game. Cameron Meredith and rookie Traquan Smith had great games, and if you saw the Traquan Smith bomb, that was the one where Breeze got his record, so that was pretty cool, and he was wide open. That was ridiculous. So Smith had 3 catches for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Cameron Meredith had 5 catches for 71 yards. And again, these depend on your roster and your size of your league. If you could use the room or whatever, again, they could be a stash. I have Meredith and Meredith and Traquan in one of my dynasty leagues, and God, I wish I'd played Traquan. I would have won, I think, but that was tough. That was a tough one to pick. And then for tight end only, I have a few. So Eric Ebron, with Jack Doyle out, Eric Ebron had a huge game. I think he scored like 31 fantasy points. So that seems to be the trend. They seem to like Eric Ebron or throwing it to the tight end because they don't really the Colts don't have a lot of weapons on offense. Their wide receivers aren't, top end. So Ebron's pretty good when he can actually catch the ball, which he seems to be doing this year. So he had a great game. I would say pick him up because tight end is brutal. Tight end is so brutal this year. There's only, top 5 guys that are even any good starting week to week. But I've got another guy here, Cameron Brate, for the Buccaneers. Now, Cameron Brate and Jameis Winston have a connection. Now, O.J. Howard is still out. He's going to be out a few more games. So I expect Cameron Brate to be a top 10 tight end those games that O.J. Howard's out. And I say pick him up. I bet he's still out there because nobody picked him up because he had a bye this week. So I would say make him a priority if you need tight end help. And then my next one is kind of a stash. And it's just, I'm going to kind of leave this up to you, how you like to play. If you like to take chances. I don't as much, but I think this could be a good play. I did this last year, and I don't think it worked out. Greg Olsen, he's got the foot problem, but I guess he's looking pretty good, and he practiced this week, so he might be back in a week or 2. So if you have the room and he's out there, maybe stash this guy because he could be a top 5 tight end if he comes back and he's okay. But with his foot problems, I don't know how, but I would say give it a shot if you have the room, if you want to go that way. Maybe kind of a riskier play, kind of to keep that bench spot open. But sometimes you don't have another option. Sometimes you look at your waiver wire and there's nobody out here. Like, oh, Greg Olsen's here. Let me pick him up and keep him up there. And sometimes that can win you the championship. Doing something like that where something no one else is doing, someone else is not paying attention. Greg Olsen's out there. Let me pick him up. Hey, he comes back. You never know. So again, kind of that upside, guy on your bench. And then I have a few. If you're like me, and you dump your defense every week and you stream them every week, which is kind of fun, and didn't work out so well for my 49er defense this week. I should have known the Arizona defense would have played better than they did. But I have 3 streaming options. So this last week, Arizona played the 49ers, and the Arizona defense scored a ton of points. And guess who they played? They played the 49ers. So this week, the Packers get the Niners at home. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Pick up the Packers defense if you get a chance. That could be bad for the Niners, but good for the Packers defense. Now the Texans, I don't know if the Texans defense is going to be out there, but they're at home versus the Bills. I always suggest when you're streaming to try to pick a defense at home. And if there's a rookie quarterback they're playing, yeah, try it. I would definitely try that. And then, Houston basically at home versus their rookie quarterback. And then the Cowboys are at home versus the Jags. Now, I know what you're saying. The Jags are pretty good. But this last week, Blake Bortles was the Blake Bortles I know that he had a ton of turnovers. He actually threw 4 interceptions, and he lost a fumble. So it seemed like he almost single-handedly lost that game for them. So I think that would be a good streaming play. And I'll tell you what, that's all I have for this week, for this week's waiver wire. If you have any questions, you can ask me any questions on my Twitter at ColossalFF. Any start sit. I have a Facebook page, Colossal Fantasy Football. And that's it. I want to thank you for joining me today. And this is actually my first YouTube video, and I plan on doing them every week. So thank you for joining me. Okay, great. Bye.